start off. Thank you, Senator, for hosting this, holding this hearing today. It's manufacturing, as you know, as you said in your opening remarks, and your history of manufacturing, I appreciate that, has declined dramatically in California. And one of the things that I would suggest that over the years we have had a dramatic growth in manufacturing early on, and in 1977 we did become the nation's #1 manufacturing state. But if you would look at the second graph there, you can see what has happened to manufacturing over the last 40 years in California. We have dropped off from 22% of our industrial workforce being manufacturing down to 8.9% of our workforce being industrial, down to 8.9% being industrial, and our output from 18% down to 11.5%. I would, you said earlier that there's two things we need to do. One is, take advantage of reshoring, and secondly, make sure that we fix our industrial climate. I would say that we need to do that in reverse, fix our industrial climate so we can take advantage of reshoring. The CMTA has done studies with the Milken Institute looking at the cost of manufacturing vis-a-vis the other 49 states. California comes up as about 23% more costly than the average of the other states, much of it driven by energy costs. And the National Association of Manufacturers has also done research looking at the cost of manufacturing in the United States versus the cost of manufacturing in the industrial states of Europe, North America, and Asia. And we come about 20% more costly there. So if you take our costs, 23% cost disadvantage, add it to the international disadvantage, we're almost 50% higher in cost than the average of the rest of the nation. I use that to emphasize the point something the gentleman made a minute ago, is that we really have a situation here where in order to be in business here, you really have to use all the latest techniques in manufacturing processes that are available to you. And I would also say that advanced manufacturing, as I say, it becomes to me, if you're not advanced and if you're not using the latest techniques, you're manufacturing someplace else, you're out of business, not in California. The third chart that I have it's titled California's Growth in Manufacturing Capacity is far below the national average. If you look at that chart, what we did is there's the Site Selection Magazine collects all the information on manufacturing growth, both in terms of new facilities and expanded facilities nationwide, and reports that annually by state. They've kept those records since 1977, which is an interesting coincidence. When we reached #1 manufacturing state in 1977 is when Site Selection Magazine started keeping the numbers. But what we did on this chart was we took the last 4 years, 2007 to 2010, and looked at all the startups and expansions nationwide, and then normalized that for population, so we could see how many startups and expansions there were per million people in each of the states. As you can see on that chart, California got about 4.8 startups or expansions per million people. The national average is 40.3. We have not nearly getting our fair share of the industrial investment in California. The next chart looks at California's manufacturing investment. This is the same type of information, only look at dollars invested, how many dollars are invested in industrial expansion per capita in each state. California was at 235. The national average was 1,335. And I might also add here that as we're coming out of this recession, there are many economists who are talking about the fact that manufacturing is actually leading the way out of this recession. And the fact is, in many cases, nationwide, manufacturing is leading the way. We looked at the numbers just here recently, looking at what the expansion of manufacturing jobs was nationally. Over the last 2 years, 2010 and 2011, we expanded manufacturing jobs on a national basis by about 4%. That was about 4,000 manufacturing jobs expanded in the United States. California actually lost jobs over those last 2 years. So while manufacturing is expanding in other states, California is still trying to figure out where our bottom is on manufacturing employment. Next chart, the one with the tall columns. This chart looks at the venture capital investment in California versus actual industrial investment in California. The chart is divided into 3 5-year periods, 1995 through 99, etc. And looking at the tall columns represent total venture capital investment in the United States. And the dark part of that column at the bottom represents the percentage of that investment that comes to California. and it's obviously very visibly seen there. California, by far, has more than its fair share of venture capital investment in California. Actually, we've got 45% over the last 15 years of all venture capital investment. However, when we look at what turns out to be actual industrial investment, that's the small columns next to the large columns, show that in the late 1995 to 99, we were at 7.7% of all industrial investment nationwide. In the first part of this last decade, 2000-2004, we dropped to 3.6%. In 2005 to 2009, I think a figure you used earlier, 1.3% of all industrial investment came to California. And it's just really an unsustainable place for California to be as we try to grow our economy and grow middle-class jobs back to California. Certainly, the venture capital investment is welcome, and we hope it continues and we hope it grows. The fact is that we can't live on that alone. And I think somebody made the point earlier on manufacturing jobs, maybe it was you, Senator, that how does that translate into jobs? Well, you know, venture capital investment usually happens in small companies with a very few number of highly educated scientists and engineers. But what we really need is the production side of it, which as soon as we have those ideas created, we're moving someplace else in the nation or someplace else in the world to create those massive jobs in the middle class area. So, and then there's another. The next chart shows the 33-year history of manufacturing in California. Each of those columns represents a year, and the numbers at the top represent the percentage of manufacturing investment that came into California. And that chart shows that from 1977 through 2000, California, although it peaked once during the defense buildup during the late 1980s, and again during the late 1990s with the high-tech bubble, what the fact is we got about 5.6% of all national industrial investment during that time. Not nearly what our percentage of the population was, but it was sustainable, and we continued to grow. Since 2000, we have been unable to attract that kind of investment in California. Our average since 2000 is 1.9% of national industrial investment. So we just continue to fall off the edge on investment. At one time, California has always been an innovative state, especially in the post-war era. The difference has happened is that the cost of doing business here has increased to a degree where now instead of innovating and manufacturing here, we innovate here, manufacture someplace else, and then market back to California. And California was really, our modern state budget, I would suggest, was developed during a time when we had a very robust, growing industrial economy. And we developed a budget that required those kind of new revenues every year. The only thing we could be certain of was that each year we'd see more revenues coming into the state. If there was a recession, we waited for 2 or 3 quarters and it all turned around and came back. That's not happening anymore. We're not seeing that rebound in manufacturing here as we have seen in the past after major recessions. So I think that what we need to do is we need to look at programs like this and figure out how we incentivize companies to get here. And something that I would go back to a question that was asked earlier is, you know, how does advanced manufacturing, how do you fit that in? How does that work? Well, the fact is, if we're already able to compete, why do we need additional incentives? And I would just say that we have every year the cost of manufacturing in California through California-only rules, regulations, fees go up. I mean, we have a law on the books right now that we're implementing, AB 32, that for some of these gentlemen at this table, they're going to have to absorb that $1 billion in cap and trade auction costs that are going to be forced on them. So it's not just, you know, how do you succeed today with today's costs? It's how do we succeed tomorrow with the additional costs we're going to be seeing as we go. More of our regulatory agencies go from general fund-based funding to fee-based funding by the companies that they represent. Those fees go up every year. So this kind of manufacturing, advanced manufacturing tax incentive would certainly go at least part of the way to mitigating some of those additional costs that we're seeing from year to year in a state that's already a very high-cost manufacturing state.